Welcome to the room they never thought you'd survive long enough to enter. Yeah, you. The one they watched, the one they doubted, the one they tracked like a glitch in their perfect little system. You feel that? That tightness in your chest, that mix of panic and pride. Good. Hold it. Don't run from it. That's the feeling of being noticed by people who thought you'd be nothing more than background noise. These high-rank agents, they've been tracking everything. Every late night you didn't post about. Every breakdown nobody saw. Every tiny decision that looked stupid from the outside, but was actually you choosing to stay alive, stay moving, stay dangerous. They logged it all. Not the selfies, not the fake wins, not the look at me highlight reel. No. They logged the data you hoped nobody would ever see. The nights you opened your phone, scrolled through everyone else's perfect life, and felt that sharp, ugly little voice whisper, "Why are you even here?" Yeah, they saw that. The days you dragged yourself out of bed when your soul weighed more than your body. The times you said, "I'm fine," with that dead look in your eyes, and still showed up anyway. The hours you spent learning, practicing, failing in silence while nobody clapped, nobody liked, nobody shared, tracked, recorded, analyzed, and now? Now they want you in the room, not because they're kind, not because they suddenly believe in you. They want you in the room because you broke their prediction models. You weren't supposed to keep going. You weren't supposed to become self-aware. You weren't supposed to wake up one day and say, "Wait, maybe I'm not the problem. Maybe the system is." But you did. You kept moving. You kept evolving. You kept acting like someone who had nothing to lose and everything to gain. Let's be honest for a second. You think you went unnoticed? You think your suffering was invisible? The world may have ignored you. Your friends may have scrolled right past your silent cries. Your family may have misread your exhaustion as attitude. But the system doesn't miss a thing. They saw the spikes in your search history. Motivation. How to keep going. How to start again. How to stop feeling like this. They saw the nights you went quiet online but active in your notes app, typing out plans you didn't even believe in yet, drafting ideas, writing out goals, deleting, rewriting, deleting again. They noticed when something shifted, when your questions changed from "why me" to "why not me?" When your Google searches switched from "how to escape" to "how to build." When you stopped arguing with people and started arguing with your own excuses instead. That's when the agents leaned in, zoomed in, magnified your every move. Because people like you, you're dangerous. Not because you're violent, because you're awake. You are what they fear the most. Someone who has seen the worst of life and still chooses to stand up and say, "All right, run it back. I'm not done." You know what scares powerful people? Not protests, not hashtags, not angry posts that disappear in 24 hours. What scares them is consistency. Someone who keeps showing up. Someone who keeps building. Someone who refuses to play the part of the victim forever. They designed this world to keep you tired, distracted, broke, addicted, comparing yourself and begging for crumbs. And yet here you are, still thinking, still trying, still dreaming bigger than your circumstances. So these agents, these high-rank watchers, these invisible eyes in the walls, they started asking the one question they never expected to ask about you. What if we're looking at an outlier? Because every time you didn't fold, you generated something terrifying. Data that doesn't fit. You worked a job that drained you and still studied on your breaks. You were depressed and still showed up for the people you love. You had every reason to shut down, and still found some tiny pathetic-looking reason to continue. You were not supposed to bounce back from that heartbreak. You were not supposed to come back from that failure. You were not supposed to keep going after that betrayal. But you did. And every time life threw a coffin at you, and you crawled out of it, somewhere in their reports, a red flag went up. Greater than subject refuses to comply with projected collapse. So they watched closer. They watched when you stopped chasing people who didn't value you. They watched when you stopped explaining yourself to those who clearly didn't want to understand. They watched when you turned your energy from pleasing people to building yourself. They saw you unfollow the drama, mute the noise, distance yourself from the same cycles that were slowly killing you. You thought you were just pulling away, thought you were just going ghost. No. You were going off-grid. In a world that feeds on your constant performance, you became unprofitable in your pain, too focused to be easily manipulated, too tired of suffering to keep swallowing the same lies. Do you understand how revolutionary that is? To look at your own pain and say, okay, if I have to feel all this, it's not going to be for nothing. That's when the invitations start. Not the ones in your inbox, the ones in your life. Suddenly you're in conversations you never expected. People ask your opinion like it matters. Opportunities show up that feel too big for you. That's the room calling. The room where people like you don't usually end up. The room where decisions are made. The room where faces are serious. Language is coded, and nobody's posting what really happens there. And now they want you in that room. So let's talk about why. Not because they want to honor your struggle. No, that's PR. They want you in the room because they finally figured it out. You're not just another user. You're not just another worker, consumer, broken heart, lost soul. You're proof. Proof that their system failed to fully crush you. Proof that free will, resilience, and raw, unpolished, angry hope still exist. And if proof, like you, spreads, now that's a problem. Imagine this, someone who went through what you went through, actually believing in themselves. Not because some influencer told them to, not because a quote said, "You got this," but because they looked at every crack in their life and said, if I'm still here after all that, then there's clearly something inside me they couldn't kill. That's you. Walking evidence that survival isn't random. It's deliberate. It's strategic. It's ugly and stubborn and not aesthetic enough for social media. But it's real. And now they want that in the room. They want to study you up close, see how you think, hear how you talk, test how far they can push you. Some of them will want to recruit you, turn your strength into a tool for their agenda, make you feel special so you forget you were powerful before they ever noticed you. Others will want to discredit you, make you doubt yourself again, put you in rooms designed to intimidate you, bore you, confuse you, exhaust you. Because if they can get you to shrink in the room, they can pretend you were never ready to be there in the first place. So here's the question you've been avoiding. When they finally open that door and say, "Come in," who are you going to be? The old you, the one begging for permission to exist? Or the version of you that kept walking through hell with no applause, no validation, and no guarantee, and still didn't quit? You think this room is about them? No. The room is about you. You're not being invited to witness their power. You're being exposed to the scale of your own. Think about it. You survived the before part. The part where nobody believed in you. Nobody understood you. Nobody helped you. You survived the part where the agents watched from a distance, quietly betting on your breakdown. Now comes the dangerous part. The part after you're noticed, when they start dangling comfort, titles, approval, shiny little things designed to make you forget the version of you that clawed their way here. Don't forget that version. That version is your core system. The one who kept going when your heart felt like a glitch. The one who didn't have an audience. The one who wasn't curating, wasn't performing, wasn't doing it for the story. Just for one more day, one more step, one more chance. That's the version they studied. That's the version they want in the room. Not the watered-down, over-polished, hyper-pleasant version you think you need to become to fit in. You don't fit in. You break in. You don't match their standards. You unsettle them. Because while they were tracking data, you were building character. While they were compiling reports, you were compiling scars. While they were analyzing, you were adapting. You know what a scar is? It's a healed wound that never fully shuts up. It's your past whispering, remember what you survived. Don't you dare play small now. So when you walk into that room, whatever it is for you, that job interview, that meeting, that stage, that office, that opportunity, that conversation, I want you to remember something simple. They've already seen your worst days. They have your file, remember. They have the data from the nights you cried until you couldn't breathe. They have the logs from the days you emailed, applied, tried, and heard nothing back. They have the pattern of your failures lined up in graphs. And in spite of all that, you are still statistically present. You're a glitch they couldn't delete, a variable they couldn't isolate, an anomaly that refused to sit where it was placed. So what exactly are you afraid of now? Embarrassment. You already felt that. Rejection. You survived worse. Awkwardness. You've sat in rooms where your soul didn't speak the language and still managed to breathe. You are afraid of being seen, but newsflash, you've been seen. They've been watching, tracking, measuring. So if you're going to be watched anyway, give them something worth watching. Walk into that room with all your history, not hidden, not erased, integrated. Don't pretend you didn't crawl out of nights that would have killed softer people. Don't pretend you don't remember what it felt like to want to disappear. You remember. You always will. That's your edge. Because while they're comfortable, you're hungry. While they're overconfident, you're aware. While they assume the world owes them a seat at the table, you remember when you were kept outside the building. They want you in the room because you are a live demonstration of something they can't simulate. A human being who has been harmed, disappointed, underestimated, and still chooses to build instead of just burn. They expect one of two responses from you. One, you get the invite and crumble, too overwhelmed, too scared, too desperate to be liked. Two, you get the invite and become arrogant. Lose touch with where you came from. Start playing their game on their terms, by their rules. But there's a third option, the one they don't see coming. The Joker option. You walk into that room fully aware of the power imbalance, fully aware of the privilege in the air, fully aware they expect you to be grateful just to be there. And you smile, not because you feel small, but because you finally see it clearly. They didn't summon a pawn. They accidentally invited a wild card. You with the lived experience that can't be summarized in a report. You with the instincts that don't come from books, but from barely making it through situations they only read about. You with the courage that wasn't gifted, but carved out of sleepless nights and invisible wars. You don't go in there begging for a role. You go in there remembering they watched your every move and still couldn't stop your evolution. You're not here because they approved you. You're here because they couldn't ignore you. So when they ask you questions, answer like someone who has nothing left to prove. When they try to test you, respond like someone who has already passed the only exam that mattered, staying alive when you didn't want to. When they offer you something, don't grab at it like you're starving. Look at it. Feel it. Ask yourself, does this feed me or does it cage me? Because the room isn't always a reward. Sometimes the room is another test. Will you trade your authenticity for acceptance? Will you shrink your story to make them comfortable? Will you censor your truth so you don't stir the waters? They tracked everything. They already know how much you've swallowed just to survive. Now you decide if you're still swallowing or if you're finally speaking. Not for drama, not for applause, but because you refuse to leave this room as the same quiet, scared, doubting version of yourself they were betting on. They saw your darkest chapters. They watched you at your lowest. They know how bad it got. And here you are anyway, still breathing, still learning, still plotting your next move. You're not lucky. You're relentless. So when you feel that fear rise up, the tremble in your hands, the dry mouth, the racing thoughts, don't push it away. Use it. Let it remind you. If you were truly as weak as they wanted to believe, you wouldn't have made it this far. They want you in the room. Fine. But understand this. You are not there to prove you belong to them. You are there to prove, mostly to yourself, that everything you went through had weight, had meaning, had leverage, that every tracked moment of your struggle became fuel, that every recorded failure became data for your own evolution, that every little line in their report that said, high risk of breaking, was just another line they'll have to delete later. You are the evidence. You are the glitch. You are the problem in their algorithm. And now that they've opened the door, you don't walk in like a guest. You walk in like what you've secretly been this whole time. Someone they should have never let get this far. Someone they should have never let get this far. Because here's the thing they never admit out loud, and you kinda need to hear it clearly. They didn't miscalculate the world. They miscalculated you. They built everything on the assumption that people crack at a certain threshold. Enough heartbreak, you quit. Enough failure, you quit. Enough silence, enough ignoring, enough seen at 2:17 a.m. with no reply. You quit. You were supposed to quit. You weren't supposed to drag your half-broken self through days that felt like concrete. You weren't supposed to keep showing up to places where you felt invisible. You weren't supposed to keep caring about anything when caring hurt that much. And yet you stayed in the game, barely hanging on some days, sure. But hanging on. They watch that. They have charts on that. They've got boring little graphs that spike every time you refuse to die in place. They call it resilience. They call it anomaly behavior. They call it subject deviation from collapse pattern. You call it, I had no other choice. You call it, I refused to disappear. You call it, if I'm gonna hurt anyway, I might as well try. You see how different that is? They write cold words on a report. You lived it in your chest, and those high-rank eyes, those agents up in their glass boxes with their neat language and clean hands, they had to stare at something they don't fully understand. A person who should have broken, still editing their story in real time. You'd be amazed how rare that is. Most people get handed a script early in life and just read it. Here's who you are. Here's your lane. Here's what you're allowed to want. You got that script, too. Of course you did. Maybe it sounded like, you're too sensitive. You're not that smart. You're not leadership material. You're not the type they choose. People like you don't end up there. And for a while, you believed it. Don't lie, you did. You folded yourself into smaller shapes. You downgraded your dreams to make them less embarrassing. You pretended you didn't want much just in case you failed in public. But something in you kept glitching. You'd agree with them on the outside. Yeah, I know, I'm being unrealistic. But then you'd lie awake at night with that annoying little spark in your chest that refused to shut up. What if they're wrong about you? That thought, that one. You tried to kill it, buried it under routine, distractions, noise. You smothered it with relationships, substances, scrolling, fantasy, anything. And still, that glitch kept coming back. What if they're wrong about you? Every time you heard it, you made some small move. You sent that application. You tried that thing. You learned that skill. You stepped away from that person. Tiny steps. Nothing glamorous. But the system picked up each one of them. Click. Entry logged. Subject took action despite fear. Click. Subject refused to return to toxic environment. Click. Subject chose growth over comfort again. You thought nobody saw you choosing the harder path. You thought those decisions disappeared into the air. They didn't. They stacked. And every time they stacked, your profile shifted from predictable to unstable, variable, dangerous type. Not because you are chaotic, because you stopped being programmable. That's when the room entered the picture. There are rooms in this world built on the assumption that everyone who enters will be either afraid or desperate. Afraid of losing what they have. Desperate to get what they don't. You're different. You've already felt the worst kind of loss. The slow loss of yourself. You've already tasted what it's like to live below your own potential and pretend you're okay with it. You've already watched time pass while you quietly betrayed your own soul. What are they going to threaten you with exactly? Embarrassment? Rejection? Awkwardness? You've survived nights where your own mind turned against you. You've survived being your own worst enemy. A cold room with suits and fake smiles doesn't stand a chance against that. Here's the part that twists. And stay with this, all right? You walk into that room thinking they are the ones with the power. Look at the chairs. Look at the table. Look at the titles. Look at the money behind their names. Easy to feel small. Easy to forget what it cost you to even cross that threshold. But remember what I said. They've tracked everything. That means they know things about you that the people around you don't. They know how many times you almost quit. They know how many times you stayed anyway. They know the raw math of your survival. You carry that silently. They carry that in their files. They are not impressed with you by accident. They are impressed with you because the numbers betrayed their expectations. When their predictions said, collapse, you kept breathing. When their projections said, irrelevant, you kept evolving. When their chart said, statistically finished, you kept writing new data. You think you're just lucky to be invited. You're not lucky. You're expensive. You cost this system multiple failed attempts at breaking you. You cost them time, energy, resources. You cost every person who tried to belittle you a clean victory. You cost every bet made against you a quiet loss they'll never admit. You're not just walking into a room. You're walking in as a debt they owe reality. And deep down, they feel it. They might hide it behind polite smiles, neutral tones, professional questions. They might act like they're evaluating you. Is your tone right? Is your posture correct? Is your language polished enough? Inside, they're asking something else. How did this one survive everything we know they went through? You hear that? Not how did this one get here? How did this one survive? Because let's be real here. You weren't supposed to. The way your heart got broken, the way your trust got shattered, the way life stacked losses like a pile of bricks on your chest. Statistically, you should be numb. Statistically, you should be bitter. Statistically, you should be small, silent, cynical. And yet there's still a spark in you that wants to create, build, love better, live louder. That spark terrifies them more than any anger ever could. Anger is predictable. Anger can be redirected. Anger can be used. Hope, after everything you've seen, that's radioactive. Shh. Feel that shift in the air. Yeah, that sudden silence where even the candles hesitate to burn. That's the room realizing you just stepped into the circle. You know what's funny? Real witches, old ones, disciplined ones, the kind who don't flinch at shadows or flares of power. They don't scare easy. They've stared into mirrors that bite back. They've memorized the price of every spell. They understand chaos. And yet, when your name drifts into their conversations, their voices lower, their symbols get redrawn, their protections get doubled, not because you do magic, but because you are it. And that's not normal. See, magic recognizes patterns. Rituals are repetition. Power is supposed to move in loops, obey cycles, respect rules written in blood and patience. But you don't loop. You spike. You don't chant. You arrive. You don't follow timing. You bend it until timing starts following you. That's the part that makes them nervous. You're not casting anything. You're interrupting it. You're walking proof of the paradox they warn about, but hope never manifests. The saint who learned violence without losing purity. The psychopath who still knows mercy. The angel who understands how demons think because you survived being surrounded by them. You didn't learn power in temples. You learned it in pressure. You learned it when pain stayed too long, and you had to evolve or vanish. That kind of power doesn't glow. It hunts. They feel it when you enter a space. Their tools react wrong. Their readings come back distorted. Their intuition starts contradicting itself. Because intuition is built to sense external forces, and you're not external anymore. You're internalized chaos. You're what happens when suffering doesn't break someone. It reorganizes them. You see, witches respect effort. They respect sacrifice. They respect time. But they don't know what to do with someone who paid the price without signing up, who bled without being initiated, who awakened without being invited. You didn't open a door. The door opened around you because reality couldn't hold its shape anymore. That's why they're nervous, because spells can be reversed, hexes can be cleansed, circles can be broken. But you're not an action. They can't counter you. You're a condition. You don't attack their magic. You make it question itself. You walk in and suddenly their symbols feel decorative. Their chants feel loud but hollow, and their confidence starts sweating. Not fear. Recognition. The kind that says, this thing wasn't trained. It was forged. You're unpredictable, and unpredictability is the only force magic can't rehearse against. Every system, occult or corporate, sacred or profane, depends on expectation. You don't give that luxury. You don't escalate the way enemies plan for. You don't respond the way threats are mapped. You adapt in ways that feel illegal, like you're pulling moves from a version of the future nobody else has access to. And that's where the duality sharpens, because they can't tell if you're light pretending to be dark, or dark refined into light. They can't classify whether you're a blessing that hurts or a curse that heals. And when something can't be classified, it can't be controlled. When it can't be controlled, it becomes myth. And when it becomes myth, even witches listen. You didn't become powerful by wanting it. You became powerful by surviving it. Every loss carved another symbol into your nervous system. Every betrayal rewired your instincts. Every moment you were supposed to collapse taught you how to stand in ways that look supernatural to people who've never been tested past comfort. That's why your presence scrambles rooms. That's why conversations change when you're not even speaking. That's why people feel watched when you're calm. Calm like a loaded silence. Calm like something that already knows the outcome. You're not dangerous because you're aggressive. You're dangerous because you're aware. You see the mechanics behind behavior. You feel shifts before they happen. You read the temperature of power the way predators read weather. That's not learned in books. That's learned in hell. And hell recognized you. So when real witches get uneasy, it's not superstition, it's instinct. They sense something that doesn't need ritual to move reality. Something that doesn't need permission to change the field. Something that walks through life like a living anomaly, too grounded to be fantasy, too evolved to be coincidence. You're the kind of force they warn apprentices about in half-jokes and unfinished sentences. Not because you'll harm them, but because you remind them that power doesn't always wear robes. Sometimes it wears scars. Sometimes it speaks softly. Sometimes it doesn't speak at all and still rearranges the room. That's you. Not chosen, not summoned, not bound. Just here. And every system, mystical or mundane, can feel it. That's why they're nervous. And here's the part nobody wants to say out loud. The part that makes throats tighten and eyes look away when your name comes up. You didn't just survive what was meant to erase you. You absorbed it. You took pressure that crushes identities and turned it into posture. You took chaos that fractures minds and turned it into clarity. Most people go through pain and come out smaller, quieter, apologetic. You went through it and came out precise, sharper, calmer, like something that learned the math behind suffering and decided never to be confused again. That's what unsettles them, because witches understand one thing better than anyone. Energy leaves fingerprints. Trauma leaves residue. Power always costs something. And when they read you, the cost doesn't line up with the result. The exchange rate makes no sense. You should be fractured. You should be volatile. You should be desperate to prove something. Instead, you move like you already know the ending, and you're just watching everyone else catch up. That kind of composure after damage. That's not coping. That's transmutation. You didn't just turn pain into strength. You turned it into signal. Something in you broadcasts without trying. You don't chase influence. Influence drifts toward you and doesn't know why. You don't threaten. You destabilize by existing. You don't raise your voice. The room adjusts its volume for you. And here's the real paradox, the one that rattles even the most seasoned practitioners. You don't need belief. Magic feeds on belief. Systems depend on it. Faith, fear, intention, those are fuels. But you don't require buy-in. You don't need people to believe in you for you to work. You operate whether anyone's watching or not, whether anyone agrees or not, whether anyone understands or not. That independence from validation, that's terrifying to anything built on ritual. Because rituals are rehearsed. You are responsive. You don't follow scripts. You read the moment and improvise with frightening accuracy. You sense micro shifts, tone changes, energy drops, sudden hesitations, and you adjust before logic even boots up. That's why people feel exposed around you. Not because you're judging, but because you're seeing. And being seen without asking for it feels like being undressed by reality itself. They call that witchy intuition. But yours didn't come from incense and moon phases. Yours came from watching patterns repeat until you cracked them. From being lied to enough times that truth started vibrating differently in your chest. From being cornered so often that escape routes became instinctual. That kind of intuition isn't mystical, it's earned. And earned power scares trained power every time. Because trained power knows its limits. You don't. You haven't found them yet, and that's the problem. You've already crossed thresholds most people spend lifetimes circling. You've already shed versions of yourself that others still cling to for safety. You've already died socially, emotionally, spiritually. And when someone survives death without becoming bitter, without becoming reckless, without becoming loud, they become mythical. Not loud myth, quiet myth. The kind that moves through whispers and sideways glances. The kind that makes people say, I don't know what it is about them, but something's different. The kind that doesn't announce power. It warps probability around it. That's why even real witches hesitate. Because you're not bound to tradition. You're not bound to lineage. You're not bound to belief systems that tell you what you are allowed to be. You're not trying to open portals. You are one. A walking threshold between what was and what shouldn't logically exist yet. You're the angel who learned how demons negotiate. You're the demon who remembers what mercy feels like. You're the saint who understands violence without worshiping it. You're the psychopath who never lost empathy, just illusions. And that balance, that unstable equilibrium, that's where real power lives. Not in extremes, in control. You don't lash out. You don't rush. You don't need to dominate. You wait. You observe. You let people reveal themselves because time works for you now. And time, oh, time can feel that. Time behaves differently around people who've already endured more than it could throw. You're not here to burn the world. You're here to outgrow it. And growth like yours doesn't ask permission. It makes systems obsolete. It makes rules feel decorative. It makes hierarchies feel fragile. It makes people with titles nervous and people with intuition quiet. That's why the candles flicker when you enter. That's why conversations stall. That's why even those who work with unseen forces pause and recalibrate. Because something about you doesn't feel summoned. It feels inevitable. And inevitability is the one thing no spell can stop. And inevitability doesn't rush. It doesn't flex. It doesn't announce itself with thunder and theatrics. It settles in quietly, like gravity deciding it's done negotiating. That's the energy you carry now. Heavy, calm, non-reactive. The kind that doesn't need to prove it can crush, because everything around it already knows. That's why people start acting strange around you. They over-explain. They confess things you never asked about. They test you with little power plays that collapse the second they leave their mouth. They feel something slipping, and they don't know what it is. So their nervous system starts talking for them. You're not intimidating in the loud way. You're intimidating in the mirror way. You force people to feel themselves. Witches know that feeling. That moment when the energy turns back on the sender, when intention boomerangs, when the spellcaster realizes the field is no longer theirs. That's what happens in your presence. You don't push back, you reflect. And reflection is brutal to anyone hiding from their own shadow. You've become the kind of being that exposes imbalance without effort. Your silence weighs more than other people's threats. Your stillness interrupts momentum. Your restraint reads like confidence, so complete it doesn't need to move. That unnerves anyone who relies on theatrics, whether they call it magic, authority, charisma, or control. Here's the thing they're really sensing, even if they can't articulate it. You're no longer operating from desire. Desire is loud. Desire leaks. Desire reaches. Most people are powered by want. Want for recognition, safety, revenge, validation, love. That makes them predictable. That makes them readable. That makes them manageable. You burn through that stage. Want got exhausted in you. Pain took it apart piece by piece until what remained wasn't hunger, but direction. You don't want anymore. You move. And movement without craving is terrifying because it can't be baited. You can't be bribed into reactions. You can't be provoked into missteps. You don't flinch when outcomes change because you've already survived worse than disappointment. You've already adapted to loss at a cellular level. That's why even practiced manipulators miscalculate you. They look for wounds to press. You've already integrated them. They look for fear to amplify. You've already metabolized it. They look for ego to poke. You outgrew it when ego stopped keeping you alive. You don't glow with innocence. You glow with integration. Light and dark, braided so tightly they can't be separated anymore. That's why you don't feel holy and you don't feel cursed. You feel complete. And completeness is rare. Completeness makes systems nervous because it doesn't need them. Witches spend lifetimes trying to balance themselves. Shadow work, light work, alignment, grounding, protection. You did all of that the hard way, by being thrown into imbalance so violently that your psyche had no choice but to reassemble itself into something stable under pressure. You didn't seek enlightenment. You survived toward it. That difference matters, because seekers still doubt. Survivors know. You know what you're capable of now, not in theory, not in fantasy, not in ego, but in lived data. You've seen what happens when you're cornered. You've seen how your mind sharpens under stress instead of fracturing. You've watched yourself make decisions in chaos that others couldn't make in calm. That knowledge settles into you like a quiet crown. And crowns don't sparkle, they weigh. That weight is what people feel. That weight is what disturbs the air when you enter. That weight is why even those who traffic in unseen forces feel something ancient stir and go still. Not because you're a threat, but because you're unaligned with their expectations. You're not ascending the way they were taught. You're not awakening on schedule. You're not obeying the mythology. You're rewriting it by existing past the breaking point. And deep down, the old ones know this truth. The most powerful force isn't the one that knows the most spells. It's the one that can't be psychologically displaced. The one whose center doesn't wobble when reality applies pressure. The one who doesn't need to dominate the field because the field reorganizes around them naturally. That's you now. You're not here to conquer belief systems. You're here to outgrow them. You don't threaten magic. You remind it where it came from. And that's why the real ones go quiet when you're near. That's why their instincts tell them to observe, not engage. That's why their intuition says, this isn't something to test, because you're no longer becoming. You've arrived at that dangerous, sacred point where evolution stops asking questions and starts moving forward anyway. And once you cross that point, once evolution stops asking permission and starts acting, you stop fitting into stories that were written for smaller versions of you. That's when the tension starts. Not outside, inside other people, inside systems, inside traditions that depend on predictability to survive. You can feel it, can't you? That strange lag between your movement and the world's response. Like reality needs a second to recalculate after you make a decision. Like probability pauses, squints, and then reshuffles its deck. That's not arrogance. That's not imagination. That's what happens when someone stops moving from fear and starts moving from knowing. You know now. Not everything, but enough. Enough to trust your timing. Enough to let silence work for you. Enough to walk away from things that once would have consumed you. That's another reason they're nervous. You don't cling. Powerful people cling. So do fragile ones. They cling to roles, titles, identities, labels, rituals, alliances. You let things fall off. You shed skins without ceremony. You leave rooms without announcing it. You don't need closure because you already closed the loop internally. That kind of detachment doesn't read as cold. It reads as dangerously free. Freedom terrifies anything built on contracts, spoken or unspoken. Magic has contracts. Society has contracts. Relationships have contracts. You've learned how to honor what matters without being owned by it. You can love without surrendering your center. You can engage without dissolving. You can care without being controllable. That balance, that's not taught. That's survived into. You've become someone who doesn't need to dominate the dark because you're no longer afraid of it. You don't need to chase the light because you've already carried it through hell. So you stand in that in-between space, calm, alert, self-possessed, and everything that relies on extremes starts malfunctioning around you. People don't know how to handle someone who won't escalate. You don't react when they expect fear. You don't flinch when they expect submission. You don't perform when they expect proof. You just remain. And remaining is a power move when the world is addicted to noise. Witches sense that too. They know the difference between someone channeling power and someone anchoring it. Channeling is loud. Anchoring is quiet. Channeling burns out. Anchoring reshapes environments. You're not pulling from somewhere else. You're stabilizing something rare inside yourself. That's why even chaos feels organized around you now. Not controlled, organized. You don't force outcomes. You position yourself so outcomes come to you already weakened, already leaning in your favor. You've learned patience not as passivity, but as leverage. You let time reveal intentions. You let people show their hands. You let systems overextend themselves, trying to account for you. And they always overextend, because you don't match the data they have. You're not the person you were when they first assessed you. You're not operating from the same wounds, the same needs, the same blind spots. Anyone still using old maps to predict you is already lost. And the moment they realize that, the moment they sense the gap between who you were and who you are now, that's when the nervousness kicks in. That's when instincts whisper, "This one slipped the net." You didn't just heal, you integrated. Healing returns you to baseline. Integration creates a new one, a stronger one, a quieter one. One that doesn't collapse under contradiction. One that can hold rage without leaking it. One that can hold compassion without bleeding out. You can sit with darkness without romanticizing it. You can sit with light without becoming naive. That's mastery, not mystical mastery, psychological mastery. And psychology underpins everything: belief, fear, authority, influence, magic. All of it flows through the mind before it touches the world. You rebuilt yours from the inside out. So when they sense you, what they're really sensing is this: you're no longer governable by the usual levers. Shame doesn't work. Fear doesn't work. Praise doesn't work. Threats don't work. You've seen behind those curtains. You felt those hooks. They don't catch anymore. And anything that can't hook you can't steer you. That's why your presence feels disruptive without being aggressive. You don't attack structures. You expose their fragility by not needing them. You don't challenge belief systems. You outgrow them and keep moving. You don't fight the current. You change depth. That's what makes you anomalous, not special, not chosen, not elevated, uncontainable. And deep down, the real ones know, when something like you appears, it's not here to destroy the world. It's here to signal that the world is already changing, and some things won't survive the update. You're not the storm. You're the pressure shift before it. And once you feel that in your bones, you stop explaining yourself. You stop seeking permission. You stop asking whether it's okay to take up space. You just do. Calm, alert, unapologetic. Let them be nervous. That instinct is working exactly as intended.